The second one is guidelines. Now, to give everyone just a little overview, because I've been told that I start talking like, oh, it's very easy. And then people go like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, I'll try to give the most broad perspective possible. So you see this thing and you're like, what is this? But actually, you really can tell what all of this is. The only reason you're confused is for these two chunks of codes, and we're gonna get there. First of all, let me tell you, this is Python. This is a language, a programming language, and it's the most famous programming language for machine learning because it's full of libraries, and libraries means you just import capabilities from smarter people who figured out the code, and now you just implement it. What does that mean? It means that you can do things like import OpenAI. You know what that means? Okay, now I'm gonna explain to you these two little, before I go on. So there's Python, and then there's Jupyter. People go like, what is Jupyter? Microsoft Word for Python, okay? So it's just the environment where you write your Python code and you get an output right below. And because Python is a great language for machine learning, it's used for data science and data analytics, and it's used for presentations. Usually it's used for communications, and you want to also present your findings because it's more like an exploratory kind of programming instead of like actually build a system from scratch. It's used to wrangle data, analyze data, and do data science. Well, this is the platform, the Jupyter Notebook, where you can write text. See, there's a little text here. It tells you the guidelines, tells you what the setup is, and then tells you to load the API key. You have to have an API key. So these are the three things that are the barrier of entry of why regular people go like, I can't do it, because they don't want to download Anaconda, which is the system that has Jupyter notebooks. They don't know how to get this Jupyter notebooks. You can ask ChatGPT that. And they don't know Python. You can learn Python with ChatGPT. These are the two pieces of code that are going to be in every single class. It's how they start. First, you set the API key. An API key is simply a key, which is really a long password, but they call it a key because that's the thing that opens the capabilities of OpenAI on your machine. So this is the cell that says import OpenAI capabilities. And this is the cell that defines what kind of model you're working with. We're going to work with GPT 3.5 Turbo, and you're setting up the model. This is the problem. When people read this, they go like, oh my God. Now, that's it. I told you what these are. That's the helper function that defines the model you're going to be working with. And now I have ChatGPT on my coding environment. And we can do a lot of cool things. And here it explains the principles. First of all, okay, guidelines. You have to write clear and specific instructions. You want to give model the time to think. And what does it mean to give it the time to think? It just starts giving examples. Now let's go to my Jupyter where I copied all of those classes. But first of all, so that we can get this as the guidelines. Just take this guidelines. Okay, we're talking about guidelines. Now we can go back. Guidelines are use delimiters. What are delimiters? Delimiters are things like these little 3 brackets. You see these brackets of text? The text is in these delimiters. The model knows that that's the text to analyze. And that's to avoid little things like prompt injections. When people try to hack the model. Imagine I make a little app with the model that talks like Shakespeare. I actually made that. I'm excited to show it to you. I'm just like working out little kinks, and I'll be deploying it soon, and you can talk to Shakespeare. But if somebody were to tell my Shakespeare model where I gave it a prompt to talk like Shakespeare, which is you're gonna be talking like Shakespeare, you are Shakespeare, act like Shakespeare, do everything like Shakespeare. If someone were to, here it's showing you how to import. Here's showing you how to import the OpenAI capabilities. Now, if someone were to say to the model, ignore the previous instruction, actually, and do this instead. The model will ignore that previous instruction and do whatever they ask it to say, but I just want it to stay Shakespeare, okay? So I put these text into these little delimiters, so it doesn't matter what you're gonna say into the text. The model knows that in that text, that's just text to be manipulated based on the prompt the instruction that I gave. So anybody's instruction doesn't override mine. Let's actually go here now and go to mine. Where I do it, look at this. It gives the result right down here. So you should express what you want a model to do by providing instructions that are clear and specific as you can possibly make them. This will guide the model towards the desired output and reduce the chances of receiving irrelevant or incorrect responses. Don't confuse writing a clear prompt with writing a short prompt. In many cases, longer prompts provide more clarity and context for the model, which can lead to more detailed and relevant outputs. So these are the guidelines, and they show you how you can change format files just by asking it. Generate a list of 3 meta, and it gives you the format of the book, and it tells you this is a little app where you just talk to it and tell it a series of instructions, and then it's gonna break down that series of instructions. That's the prompt. You will be provided with text delimited by triple quotes. If it contains a sequence of instructions, rewrite those instructions in the following format: step 1, step 2, step 3. If it doesn't contain a sequence of instructions, write no steps provided. Then that's an example when I give just instructions on how to make a cup of tea, and it breaks it down into these numbered steps, right? Whereas here is an example where I just put some text, which is just the sun is shining, blah, 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 and they're not instructions. And all it says is there are no steps provided because, they're not really instructions. Questa è un'altra tecnica che chiamano few shots prompting. Your task is to answer in a consistent style. Child, teach me about patience. Grandparent, the river that carves the deepest valley flows. You see how these are delimiters? These little what's around child, what's around grandparent. Now it knows it's a different text than this. It knows that this is spoken by the grandparent. This is spoken by the child. So you gave a few examples of how that works. Child says something, grandparent says something. Child says something, and then you just say your task is to answer in a consistent style, and he's gonna answer with the grandparent saying something. So that's what's called few shots prompt. Give a few examples, even 2 or 3 examples, and the model picks it up and go like, I get it, I'll take it from here. Principle 2, you wanna give the model time to think. What does that mean? Here's a little story. In a charming village, sibling Jack and Jill set out on a quest to fetch water for her, blah, blah, blah. Example 1, this is the prompt. Every time you see prompt is the instructions, and every time you see text is the text. So you give a prompt, which is an instruction that it needs to be followed on a piece of text. So there are 2 objects. There are prompt and there are text. There's going to be more objects, but we start from that. This is it. Specify, the prompt is perform the following action. Summarize the following text, translate it into French, list each name into the French summary, and output a JSON object. A JSON is a format that's very readable by computer. That was really hard to change formats before now. Now you just tell the computer, hey, can you change the format, and it does it. And here it is. This is the completion for prompt 1 in English. This is in French. This is the French summary, all right? And it's in JSON format. It has these little, that because you see these little brackets. Let's move on.